This is your daily real estate syndication show, and I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today is a highlight show that's packed with value from different guests around a specific topic. Don't forget to like and subscribe, but also go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can sign up to start investing in real estate today. I hope you enjoy the show. Our guest is Ferd Niemann. Thanks for being on the show, Ferd.
Thanks, Whitney. Glad to be here.
Ferd is a mobile home park lawyer, owner, operator, investor, podcaster, MBA, CCIM, and broker also. He focuses on solving complex real estate problems. He is passionate about real estate and helping others. Ferd, welcome to the show. It's just interesting. I know you and I were talking about this for the show, but just, branding yourself as that mobile home park lawyer, it's just amazing. It's a great idea that, you can focus in that niche, be an expert, and then people know who that expert is. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about, yourself and let's diving into the mobile home parks and how you're helping these other operators and how you've got to where you're at now. But so give us a little more about yourself and your practice and your mobile home park business.
Yeah, so I'm based here in Kansas City. So I practice mobile home park operations in the Midwest. And then on the legal services, I'm pretty much going nationwide. I don't do litigation or like evictions in court in other states, but here I pretty much touch a lot of operational consulting on retail license, water, sewer issues, LLC setups, contracts, leases, title work, title objections. I'm a zoning and real estate lawyer by trade, so I do a lot of zoning and permitting issues, which is really important in the MHP space. Grandfathering is very important in this asset class. Do some syndication work on the legal side, do some syndication work on the operational side as well. And then, all your other kind of blocking and tackling of contracts and real estate law. And just kind of consulting on MHP. So that's kind of the current practice. By way of background, like I said, I'm an attorney by trade. I practiced law at a boutique real estate firm here in Kansas City, probably the best firm in the metro, did zoning law, tax incentives. Before that, I was a county appraiser here in Kansas City, youngest in county history to do that. And I had a 75-person team and $8 million operating budget and worked in government for 5 years. I pretty much had two jobs my whole life, I went to school for a decade, but I was doing that all while working. I went to law school while working full time. So it's just been the hustle. And today I got two jobs now, I'm owner, operator, and lawyer. So it's been a fun ride, but look forward to doing more.
Wow. Went to law school while working full time. I mean, I can relate to that. Just two businesses or two jobs and working full time while, getting a business, going and growing and all these things. That's not easy, but it shows, just your determination and a willingness to make it happen, which I'm sure is so crucial to where you're at now as well. So let's dive into, your niche, your specialty, which is mobile home parks, especially from the legal side. I know you mentioned a few things there like zoning and permits and grandfathering and even syndicating. And let's talk about some of those things as it relates specifically to mobile home parks and issues that, people you're working with are having in those places.
Sure. I mean, within MHP, it's very common for municipalities, cities in particular, to not like mobile home parks. There's a stigma. They think they're trailer parks or worse, and they think they're hotbeds for crime and poor people, and as a result, they want to get rid of them. They'd much rather have a mobile home park be torn up and become a Home Depot or a new apartment or a new hotel or McMansion neighborhood. So they're very hostile. They put a lot of laws on the books, many of which are unconstitutional. The property rights are constitutional rights. So there's really three types of mobile home park. There's legal conforming, which is rare because that means it's up to the current code and it was legally permissible at some point in the past. Those are mostly new development, very little new development. You've got the illegal park, which is, somebody built it without permission and just the government's looking their way because the guy's, friends with the mayor. But, the next guy, if you or I buy it, they're going to sting us and say, oh, you can't get rid of that. You got to get rid of that. You can't have it, even though it's been there for 50 years. So you never want to buy illegal. But so most of the mobile home parks fall in the middle, which is the grandfather status, which is legal, meaning it was permissible at the time it was built, but it's now non-conforming with the current code. So a lot of what I do is try to get some of the restriction limited as it pertains to setbacks, internal and perimeter setbacks to basically allow for better infill and without being classified as a new development or redevelopment. Because the name of the game in MHP, depending on the type of asset you buy, but if you're buying heavy infill or, kind of a rehab method, you got to bring in new homes. And you bring in new homes on old lots that are typically smaller and configured differently. and cities put a lot of restrictions in place, many of which are invalid. So it's my job to read the code, get smart on that city, that state, and negotiate, hopefully in a cordial manner. But sometimes it just becomes abrasive and adversarial to the city, and you have to fight for your property rights. So that's a really big issue. And zoning is important in all real estate, but in MHP, it's probably the hardest to get zoned, and there's more hostility towards it than about any other asset class.
And would that be if you're building a new project, or you have one that's illegal, like you talked about, that you're worried about the zoning?
Most of the zoning work I do is on existing projects where somebody a new owner wants to, one, prove the permit's valid, two, prove they can bring in new homes, and kind of get a certificate of zoning. But I don't just ask the city, hey, send me the zoning, because then they're going to send you what it is. And you're like, well, no, I'm not going to accept that. I read the code, I negotiate with them, I draft a zoning letter and say, he or she, whoever it is, I need you to put this on your letterhead and sign it. And then I can go to the title company and I get a zoning endorsement, which is like another set of insurance, like belt and suspenders, so that if a different administrator of the city comes in down the road and changes city position, I've already got a backup plan. As far as new development, those are very rare. It depends on it's going to be very location, city specific. I mean, nationwide, I think there's 44,000 mobile home parks. There are less than 24 constructed in a given year. More, I mean, it's going extinct. I mean, relative, there's more being redeveloped and thrown away than are being recreated or created from new. So it depends. That becomes more of there's some degree of blue state, red state issue, but also practical. I'm in the process of expanding 2 parks I have now. So expanding is still hard, but I'm able to do it in one of them because it's in the county. So it's outside city limits. But when you get outside the county, you often run into things like no city water, no city sewer, which then increases the development cost, the risk, et cetera. So in a practical world, there are very few people out there developing new mobile home parks. I'd like to. I've got a development background on retail, so I understand the entitlement process and permitting process from that standpoint. But it's really just finding a location in a city to play ball and a market that has the right economics to make it make sense.
Well, speak to the due diligence process a little bit as far as, if we're going to buy a park now, one, to make sure it's not illegal like you talked about, but two, I'm sure we should be thinking about, okay, is there room to expand? Is it permitted for that? What's our options there? Or if, we do have to move a park out, can we move a new one in? How do we ensure, some of those things during the due diligence process so we know we're ready as soon as we close?
That's a good question. I mean, like all real estate, there's kind of the big items that you pretty much hire third-party professionals for. Like, you've got to get a phase 1 environmental. If the environmental engineer says it's dirty, you kill the deal. Maybe there's a phase 2 or something that can fix it. But for the most part, you get a phase 1, you get a survey, ideally an ALTA survey with some table A items. Obviously, you need to make sure the deal is financially feasible. So you run your market, you run your economics, you look at the market rents, you look at your assumptions, your property taxes, all that stuff. And you see if it's bankable, you get an appraisal. But those are kind of like third-party reports. From the due diligence on the buyer operator side, I want to look at the first. I want to save money at the beginning. I'm not going to go spend money on those reports. You're in for $10,000 a minute when you do that. So before I spend all the money, I get bids on that stuff right out of the gate. But then in each trade area, right out of the gate, I'm doing a test ad. I'm putting an ad on Craigslist, Facebook, local newspaper. Here's the $800 a month, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,216 square feet. And then see how many people bite on it, and I'd get a feel for the market. Obviously, I need to look at the zoning with the city. That's generally you hire a lawyer for it, unless you're confident in that area yourself. Make sure the zoning's good, the permit's good. You want to make sure that you check out the utilities. I mean, most of the real estate, if you're buying a hotel, it's probably not on a septic, right? You're buying a mobile home park, it might be on a septic, it might be on a lagoon, it might be on a wastewater treatment plant. You might have well water. Well, all of those things include more risk. You need to get budgets for reserve. You need to get professionals to inspect them. You need to camera the sewer lines. I got about a 75-point checklist that I go through. I'm referencing some of the big, fatal issues, but you also want to just make sure you can make sure you can bring homes in. See if the city prohibits vicious dogs of some sort. See if you can put, for sale signs and banner signs out on the street. Blah, blah, blah.
Where do we find that information? Like, where would we go to search, those things with the city?
It depends on the municipality. I mean, a bigger city, like I'm in Kansas City, they're going to have a full code. You can typically go to their website and just type in Muni code, MUNY, or city code. Sometimes they call it a uniform development code. You can go to the planning website. sometimes if you don't know how to drill down on that stuff, I would say just go to the city website or county website and look for planning or development and find who the planning administrator is and call that number and say, what are the restrictions? What can I do and not do? And most cities are quasi helpful, where they'll at least point you to the right document. The ones that are really helpful will send you the exact excerpts from the code, which you want to verify, or at least you want to put it in their zoning letter that binds them in writing. And there's about 10 things I put in the zoning letter. There's some of them I've mentioned here, but there's a lot of the, research standpoint. You want to know the market area. So like, if I'm going to some town like Joplin, Missouri, I know where Joplin is, south of Kansas City by 2.5 hours. I don't really know what the vacancy rate is in that town, what the market rents are for apartments, what the market rents are for lot rent, for mobile homes. So I can look it up on Google, call those places and secret shop. I can go to bestplaces.net or run a report from a scout or some of the real estate source to give me some of that information. Look at the employment, other due diligence you do typically is you want to have good employers, meaning typically government, university, and healthcare, because those don't really go out of business. You don't want to be a one-horse town where it's like there's the one meat plant and everybody works at the meat plant. And then Smithfield Foods moves the meat plant and now you're stuck holding the bag on a trailer park. So diverse economies are good. County seats, lots of government jobs, good. And then the personal preference of what's your bandwidth as far as how far you want to go from your home base, how much money you have, and if you want a park that's stable, which is going to typically cost more, or you be more of a premium, or if you want a heavy lifting project, which you can get by at a discount, but it's harder to do that if you got a full-time job. So some of that's subjective as to what your investment goals are, but that's just some of the process I go through on every deal.
Our guest is Tristan Thomas. Thanks for being on the show, Tristan.
Whitney, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about it.
Tristan works with Open Door Capital LLC as a nationwide infill manager. Since 2018, he has personally acquired over 55 units, including a mobile home park of his own, and has been working alongside Brandon Turner and his Open Door Capital Fund as their nationwide infill manager. He has also been featured on Business Insider and Bigger Pockets podcasts. Tristan, welcome to the show. I know I want you to just tell the listeners a little about your story, how you got into this business, but then also tell them what an infill manager is. I bet there's a lot of listeners that are like, what in the world is that? But tell us what that is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just start with a little bit about myself. Young entrepreneur, started mobile home investing 3 or 4 years back here in Maine where I live, and pretty quickly got just really deep into it and met Ryan Murdoch, who was from Maine as well. He's
also been on the show.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So him and Brandon, they got into business together and they're having a great thing going. Well, long story short, they brought me along to tag along. So their very first park they bought in Maine, they actually hired me to infill their park. So what that means is they had, I think it was 8 or 12 vacant pads in their mobile home park. And they hired me to go out and find homes, move them in, oversee the rehab and sell them off. So that was kind of like the test run that no one even knew about. And then they said, hey, we like this mobile home park thing. And they launched Open Door Capital Fund and said, Tristan, we'd love for you to be involved. So that's kind of how it started. And, I've been on with them for almost a year now, and we're growing very quickly and it's exciting. And, there's a lot of responsibility I have, and it's just been a really cool ride. So for those who don't know what an infill manager is, basically, like I said, it's whenever we purchase these parks nationwide and there's vacant pads in the parks, and those are zero income producing pads. They don't make any money for the park. And it's my job to go out and locate a new or used home that fits our criteria. And we can get into that and move it into our community and oversee the rehab and just kind of be the infill manager. So I'm managing the infill of all of our parks nationwide. So it's been one crazy ride so far, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It's, most people don't go to college to be a mobile home infill manager. I don't think there's courses out there like that, but definitely blazing the path.
Nice. Well, maybe there's a calling there for you to create that course,
That's right.
You should own that. I don't know of anybody else that's doing that. So that's interesting, because it's not a term or title, that you hear very often or hardly ever. And so it's great, just for the listener to say, okay, if I'm doing mobile home parks, there's a position here for me to feel I need somebody that's, got the expertise that Tristan does, so we don't have those those empty pads, right? Just
Absolutely.
costing us, or that could be creating income, for our property, increasing the value, all those things. And so let's just jump into this role a little bit and what you do, Tristan, and help the listener to think about how to do this as well. If they can't hire somebody like yourself, that's just going to specialize in that. But and then we'll get to the criteria like you were talking about of that new mobile home. But let's just go through maybe a typical day or what you're looking for. Give us an example of a park maybe with some empty spots that you're working on and what you're doing, how we do this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I have my own portfolio of, a park at about around 60 units, and actually have 2 smaller parks under contract. So pretty much what I do for my own stuff is just a smaller scale of what I'm doing for ODC and for Brandon. Basically what it looks like is, these vacant pads, like I was touching on earlier, I mean, they're not making any income for the park owners, and it's an infill play. It's a huge value add play, for all your value add listeners out there. I mean, it's like buying an apartment complex that's 40% occupied, and then just going in there and blasting those units and increasing the occupancy. With mobile home parks, it's no different. It's increasing the occupancy through bringing in a mobile home, and when you really look at the numbers on how valuable it is, I mean, usually you take the lot rent, maybe around $300 a month times 12 divided by the cap rate. And, a lot of times just filling one vacant pad in your park will increase the value of your asset or property by 30, 50, 60 grand even on some cases. So, when you're looking at maybe 10 or 15 or 20 grand to infill that one spot, and all of a sudden you have a lot paying tenant who's all of a sudden just increased your value of your property by 40 or 50 grand, you can see how much value can be added over just filling 10 spots. So go ahead.
When you say one home, say, increase it by 20, increase the value by 20 to 30 grand. Is that what you're saying?
No, sorry. So,
increase the income.
Increase the value of your property by 40, 50 or 60 grand,
okay.
But it might only take you 20 grand to fill that spot, so you're already 2 or 3xing the cash needed to fill that one spot. Just by filling it with a lot paying tenant. Nice.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little deeper and what that process looks like.
So basically, I mean, when we have a vacant pad in our park and I've dubbed to fill that pad, we always check out the pad first, check out the utility connections, water, sewer, gas, electric. Depending on your state municipality, you're going to have some kind of local ordinance requirements to, maybe a concrete pad, gravel pad. There's all kinds of different things. So definitely want to check into that. But once you have, your pad prepped and ready, you're ready to go ahead and move a home on. So, I mean, at this point, basically, and everything I do with Brandon and Open Door Capital is all from my desktop computer here in Maine. And I've been really fortunate to be able to have good boots on the ground in the communities that we own throughout the country, that I'm really able to leverage my time and leverage, my boots actually having to be there. So basically that's what we do. We find boots on the ground, and they work really closely with me, and it's pretty much mobile home investing, but just infilling for these parks. So they're learning a really valuable set of skills to go out and buy these homes, what to look for, and then overseeing the process of moving it in. So I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces between contractors rehabbing them, transportation companies moving and setting them, local ordinances, certificate of occupancy inspections, the whole 9 yards. So, but once you tie it together and you do 10, 20, 30 of these infill homes, I mean, the amount of value it adds to your park is huge, and that's why a lot of people are getting into it. So,
wow. Okay. So what are some, I guess, pitfalls that you have or that you see, or maybe some other infill managers or operators, as they're doing this or having this process, or even, you find a property like this and you have some land, maybe there's a dozen homes on it already, and you think, well, okay, I could fit a dozen more here. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but what are some issues that you see through that process that other people have?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the biggest issue with anybody from trying to do this afar is the ability to locate good quality help. So when we're looking for boots on the ground for me to assist me, it's imperative that, they're responsive, that, they're motivated. I mean, it really helps us out a bunch when we got, a guy like Brandon Turner and Open Door Capital name on our chest, and we approach him and say, hey, what do you think about this idea? And a lot of times they're very excited and motivated to help us out and make some money in the meantime. So I think one of the biggest pitfalls for people is just inability to find good quality local help, and that just goes hand in hand with with my efforts. I mean, if I didn't have anybody I could count on out there in Ohio per se, sitting here in Maine, my hands are tied. So that's probably the biggest pitfall, is just making sure that you have good quality, assistants that you can, that they're at least coachable, because I mean, this is a niche, it's a niche asset. Not a lot of people know what the underside of a mobile home look like. They buy a mobile home park because they like the cash flow of it and they like the idea of bringing in homes, but they don't really know that middle space. And luckily for me, that's how I got started in industry. So it was just something that I learned, and it was second nature to me, and not a lot of people want to do it. So it's worked out pretty well.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, finding good help is so difficult. We've been going through a hiring process, and I've learned a lot about hiring recently, but finding people on the ground that will be your hands and feet when you're from a distance it's difficult. It's very difficult. So let's talk about that a little bit, about doing this from a distance. It's a lot different than when you can actually drive there and look at something, put your hands on it and see somebody in person, yourself, but you're doing this, from a great distance. And, let's talk through how you manage that a little bit.
I think it's important for sure. People have heard this on shows before, but it's just, at the end of the day, it's a limiting belief that makes you think that you can't invest in other areas of the country. And I mean, that really hurts you as an investor, and it hurts your mentality, because I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in other parts of the nation or even the world that's not in your backyard that you feel most comfortable with because you can touch it. So, I mean, I think it's imperative that, in order to scale, you got to be able to let go of some of these limiting beliefs. And this is certainly one of them. It's even gotten to the point where my own portfolio, one of my biggest properties, is 15 minutes from my house. And since I've been able to be successful and do this with Brandon from my desktop, I've been challenging myself and say, well, wait, why do I need to go and travel 15 minutes to touch my park when, I have guys there that I trust, so it's just been a transition that even though now I have stuff out of state and in state, I just transition it to where, I'm just doing everything from my desktop and my phone. So yeah, pretty much to end that point, I mean, in order to scale, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And that's just one of the things is you got to let go of the fact that you can't do it, because you just got to find the right guys, right people.
I was going to say, and the key is finding those right people that you trust. Otherwise, you're going to have to go there or fly there, right?
Yep. Yep.
If it doesn't get done properly, so what are some tools maybe that you have for communicating or organizing, and even how do you know these things have been done? What do you use?
So luckily we live in the 21st century. There's all kinds of technology at our fingertips. You just got to reach out and use it. So the biggest thing that I utilize for my job is literally my cell phone and my cell phone video camera. So whenever I need to get eyes on a vacant pad to discuss with the contractor what needs to be done, or whenever I need to get eyes on a mobile home and go through and create a scope of work with a contractor, I just whip out FaceTime. Or if they don't have an iPhone, we whip out, a Facebook Messenger and just have a video chat. And literally, I mean, it's very simple. We just start on one side of the room and we talk about what's there, what needs to happen. And I'm taking notes, I'm creating the scope of work, and we just move through the entire home. And just makes it increasingly, easy to be there in Ohio or Wisconsin or wherever, and I mean, and you have to have a lot of trust with the guys. I mean, you trust that they're going to get the job done and the job right. But with this technology we have, it's so easy to say, hey, just send me a picture as soon as you're done, leveling this pad and blah, blah. And there it is. I've confirmed it and it's done. And I'm still sitting at my desktop in Maine and the job's done, so definitely use of technology. As far as like software, like we use Asana for Open Door Capital, which has been great. It's just, a CRM tracking software basically for our team, but it's been huge. I mean, being able to, we have so much going on and we're growing so quickly, and it's just been really easy for the team to get everything in one place. We can talk to each other and all that. So technology, man, I'm telling you, it's a hack, and we're using it really well.
Do you all have a method or process of documenting these processes, or some way that your team knows to document these things, or do things? So
we got two separate sides of things. Obviously we have, the management front that manages the parks. And then we have, like the team tracking stuff for all of our key points or all of our job tasks. So, obviously management company, I believe they use Rent Manager, which all has its own perks, and they shoot out, maintenance requests and all that. But as far as us, that one place for us is Asana. That's where we can put in all of our documents, all of our tasks, follow up with each other, tag each other. So it's definitely it's best to have one centrally located spot where you can communicate with your team.
How do you learn something like Asana? We use Asana, probably not to its fullest extent by no means, but how do you all, like even teach a new teammate something like Asana?
So Asana's, it's super in depth, and honestly, I'll be the first to admit I'm not a super tech savvy guy. So when I first started with Open Door Capital, in fact, I was talking to Ryan Murdoch, and he started explaining Asana to me, and he knows that I'm not super tech savvy. He's like, man, you got, again, it was a limiting belief that like, hey, I just didn't want to do it. I couldn't do it. He's like, hey, you got to get, again, you got to get comfortable with not being comfortable if you want to grow with us, So it's one of those things where you just really got to jump in, and it was great because we had team members who I was able to call and say, hey, how do you do this? But it's really no different than anything else. Jump in, you got to learn it. So it worked out pretty well.
Thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. Please subscribe and share it with your friends. We want to help you become the passive investor you've always wanted to become, but also the operator you've always wanted to become. We want to be the number one resource for your real estate investing journey. But go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can start investing in real estate today.